All right, kids.
Just your standard hello, everyone.
Yeah. Well, we don't need any of that basic mediocre shit. Okay, kids, it's Godzilla Odyssey. Godzilla has been thrown into another universe, another crazy, whacked out, bizarre, totally unrecognizable universe. Dylan McCandless, Super DM64, and me, Bill Worcester, aka Zazubaar, we are here to recount what will happen in said universe to you. Dylan, what universe, by the way, this is issue 9, or would have been issue 9 if we would have continued to write these as proposed, like, sort of comic book serialized stories as we intended.
It is. And also, I just wanted to say, obviously, this is way overdue. We were doing these once a month, and it's been 3 months since the last one.
Yeah, that was the idea. And then prior to that, it was like 2 or 3 months between. So we have had a lot on our plate lately, though. We've been doing a lot of commentary, so fuck off.
We talked a lot of apes, of both the small, intelligent, and large, monstrous variety. But we're back now. We're almost done with this series. Interestingly enough, I mean,
we'll try our best to keep up with it from now on.
It was supposed to be 12 issues. We're on 9 now. 11 and 12 are a two-parter, so that might just be one video. So we're looking at 3 to 4 more of these, and then we're friggin' done.
We can bury this in the backyard with all the hookers.
Indeed. But issue 9 was going to be really interesting. I think in some ways, in like a weird meta way, it's like the most high concept out of any of them.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, it's the most bizarre and unrecognizable universe in the sense that that's not true at all.
So the idea is that Godzilla shows up in our universe, and not in like a. I'm trying to think of an example.
Not that we like summon him via some kind of demonic, like mythological means in reality. No, not in the Stephen King way, where in one of his Dark Tower books, the main character came into our reality and met Stephen King. It's not one of those things. We weren't going to be in it. The idea, actually much more interesting, is that Godzilla shows up in our reality. We put ourselves in it. We hate ourselves. We don't want to ruin our stories with us.
The idea, rather, is that Godzilla would show up in our reality in the 60s in Japan, and that he would encounter the people, the men, who were responsible for creating the Godzilla franchise. So it would be a story about, like, Ishiro Honda and Haru Nakajima and all those guys, and Tanaka would have been fun, all those guys who in real life created the Godzilla character and would have been in the midst of filming one of those movies when this happened, encountering their creation in real life. I thought that was a really fucking cool concept.
Now, that does raise a few questions, one of which being, the first of which being not really a big deal. I think we may have answered at one point. What movie? We had settled on it at one point. Which one was it? I believe it was either Ghidorah or Destroy All Monsters.
I think it was Ghidorah.
1964 is a good, like, Godzilla is an established thing, but it's not like, it's not a long-standing, movie after movie franchise yet. The Godzilla versus formula is not really a thing yet.
Exactly. Because I remember one of the few ideas that I actually had for this, because this is one of those ones we're going to be doing a whole lot of brainstorming right now, because all my ideas for what this one was going to be were very vague. One of my idea for how you open it is you open on a fight between Godzilla and King Ghidorah, and you write it at first as if it's an actual fight that's going on. But then somebody yells cut or whatever, and you realize that it's just them filming the movie. And then, of course, a bit later, the real Godzilla shows up. So it's
now obviously we would have to, if we are gonna do this as like it's supposed to be them filming Ghidorah, we have to obviously write that into the scene. So if Godzilla's fighting Ghidorah, Rodan and Mothra would also have to be there, because there is no bit in that movie where Godzilla and Ghidorah fight one-on-one. So
true.
These are some of the things we would have to consider that may seem unimportant, but in reality would crop up as problems, since consider, like, you might say, like, oh, fuck that, it doesn't matter. We're only writing this for hardcore Godzilla fans, though. Two of which being ourselves. So, to not put the effort into, like, making sure that stuff makes sense would be totally idiotic, because people will totally notice,
Right. And also, this was going to be a bit of a challenge writing-wise, because I was going to try to do a bit of research and make sure that I got the characters right. That it was a fairly accurate portrayal of who these men were and what their reaction might be when fucking this character that they thought was fictional, but of course in an infinite multiverse, a version of him does exist. Many versions of him do exist. Encountering that for the first time, but bit of a Wes Craven New Nightmare situation going on.
So
what would that be like? How would they take that?
Well, how much can they get involved? It's like, so Godzilla pops up in 1960s Japan. I mean, I'm assuming we're just gonna drop him in Tokyo like usual, right? Isn't that usually the? I feel like if we keep that as a through line, it would be nice.
Yeah.
So we drop Godzilla in 1963 Tokyo, maybe early 64. Not sure when exactly they were filming Ghidorah. I don't think we'll try to keep it vague enough where we can dance around it.
Because here's something I never thought of before when we were playing with this concept. Toho Studios is in the Tokyo area, right? Because if not, that throws in a big problem.
Wherever the hell where they were filmed. Well, here's the thing, though. So, what are Haru Nakajima, Eiji Tsuburaya, Ishiro Honda, Tomiyuki Tanaka, Akira Takarada, Akira Ifukube, all these guys going to be doing? Shinkichi Sekizawa. What are they going to be doing during Godzilla's attack? Like, first things first, we have to remember this. The Godzilla that will be doing the attacking does not look exactly like the Godzilla that would have existed at this point. So they're going to have to do a little, like, not much. I'm not saying like they're going to look at it and it would require a little exaggeration on their part to go, oh, that's Godzilla. I guess when it roars, it would be pretty obvious, but still, it would raise questions on that level. So you got to bring that up.
The basics of the design are there. I think it would be a similar situation to what happened in the first issue that you wrote, where the characters from the Showa universe are like, it looks like Godzilla, but there's something, kind of off, and then, they kind of have to come to terms with the fact that it's a Godzilla and perhaps just not what they're used to. This just has the added interest factor of characters who come from a universe where he's nothing but a fictional character, in fact, one that they had a hand in making.
Right, and his design has shifted several times, so I think you would have to bring that up as like, oh, it looks like a different version of the character we created.
Like what? Like if a real life Incredible Hulk ran down the streets in New York today and Stan Lee was there and saw it, what would go through his head? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of like they would just be blown away. They would question their own reality. I think initially we should play it off as like, whoever sees that it's happening first thinks that it's a reflection of like they're going crazy. I think what we need to emphasize about this one more than any other is the personal story of each of these individual human characters, as opposed to what Godzilla is doing. Because there's no fight in this one that's really going to be all that necessary to build up to in a climax, unless you want to add something. But I can't think of anything that wouldn't be contrived.
There wouldn't be anything in the real world for him to fight, except perhaps people.
Well, that's probably going to happen, but I'm not even counting that. I'm saying we might, like, you could bring in, like, a hierarchy thing, like a weapon or some interdimensional thing. But I think that's super contrived and unnecessary. I think it's more interesting to just make it about the real world, him on the ground, what happens, and like you said, the reaction of the people in the world. So I think if we just told it from the perspective of the characters who had a hand in the creation and the proliferation of Godzilla, I think that would be the best way to do it. And then at some point you can have Eulicles come in and be like, hey, here's what's going on. I'm fixing it. Don't worry about it. And just to kind of give us a little in as to what's really going on. And that's all you need from him.
It would be different from any other thing in Godzilla Odyssey.
Yes, it would be.
Everything else in Godzilla Odyssey, the focus is, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Godzilla fought X? This is more of a character piece, really. I mean, imagine that you're a young Nakajima in 1964, and you're in the midst of filming a Godzilla movie, and then a real Godzilla appears, and you look at this thing, and you notice sort of similarities between the way it behaves and the way you perform it, and you've always thought of yourself as having created this character, and then you start to question yourself, like, did you come up with that on your own, or did you pull it from some sort of weird cosmic awareness? It would make
That's definitely what's going through Nakajima's head, because he's an introspective guy. So's Honda. Honda's having a mental breakdown, though. Honda's looking at this as some kind of sign that the universe is caving in, and that this thing that they've created is going to be the destruction of the world, like the popularity of it or something. I think he takes it as a sign that he's having a mental breakdown. He's directing 2 of these Godzilla movies in 1 year. He's just made the most successful one with King Kong versus Godzilla. Here, in the beginning, he thought he was making this dark, apocalyptic horror movie about post-war Japan. I think in this story, we should have him kind of questioning where he's at. Now, here's where the optimistic kind of ending of it can come in. You and I both know that Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is a good movie and one of Honda's better Godzilla movies. So it'll come out good in the end because he'll come out of this experience kind of rejuvenated, I imagine. And as we've established in the past, the events of the end of this series will kind of wipe the slate clean for everything that Godzilla did in the other universes, so it doesn't really matter anyway. But I still think that Honda would look at this experience and go, yeah, I'm going to make a kick-ass Godzilla movie now, especially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's sort of a paradoxical idea in Godzilla traveling to a universe where he's nothing but a fictional character, because as soon as he arrives in that universe, well, he ceases to be a fictional character within the bounds of that universe, doesn't he? But
right.
given the reset button at the end of Godzilla Odyssey, it all gets put back to normal anyway, and that's why we don't have old newspaper clippings.
There would never be there would never be a Godzilla. There would never be a Godzilla movie after that, or at least one that was like the movies prior. Because then after that, a Godzilla movie is like a movie about a real tragedy. It's like a 9/11 movie or a World War II movie, At
that point, it's like a depressing, biopic.
Right. And
then maybe
you can't glorify the action like you can in a proper Godzilla movie.
And then maybe somebody and then maybe a Michael Bay comes around and makes an action movie out of it anyway. But
then everybody hates it because it's really offensive and unrealistic.
Right, and then there's a really weird romantic comedy made where at the end Robert Pattinson finds out that he's in Tokyo on the day that Godzilla attacks, and everybody hates that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's no good.
All that weird shit.
Nobody wants to see that movie. Tomoyuki Tanaka, he's instantly like, oh my god, this is the advertising dream of the century, I think. I
don't know, would he have that reaction, or would he have the opposite reaction? Because do you think he would be wise enough to say this could kill the franchise because nobody's going to want to watch a movie about it now?
Yeah, that's true. That's a better point, maybe. I was going I went the more American approach. I have to remember these are Japanese men.
See, I think, because I'm starting to think the way you write this story is you do it as a series of vignettes. So you don't tell you don't tell one overall narrative. You cut to each of these people's perspectives and just have them reacting to this thing that's happening. And
right.
Being what the. And maybe you tie it all together at the end with Eulicles coming in or something. We'd have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Basically,
and I think it makes sense for him to come to them and be like, hey, this is what happened, so don't worry about it. You guys are not crazy.
basically the structure would be you would have that opening stinger I was talking about. Then you would have all these individual chapters having each of these men and what their reactions to it are. Um, at least four that I can think of. Nakajima, Honda, fuck. Yeah, the names
Nakajima, Honda, Tanaka,
Tsuburaya.
Tsuburaya.
And Tanaka,
those are the four big ones, I think. I want Sekizawa as a supporting character for sure, because he's in the middle of this thing, writing everything. So I think we need Sekizawa locked in a room somewhere, like hammering out the script for Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and he doesn't even know that like what's going on.
Gotta get a Nakajima cameo in there somewhere. Not a Nakajima. Fuck, Ifukube. Fucking Japanese names.
Yeah, you are a mess. You're confusing me, and I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good with most of them. No, so Ifukube would definitely have to be in there. So I think the question, we don't want them getting involved with stopping Godzilla, or do we?
I mean, there's nothing really that they could do.
No, nothing. But
the only way that you could even bring them into that is if the Japanese government is like, wait a minute, this is a movie, and then they go to the people who made the movie.
That's what
like,
I'm saying. Well, does that happen, or is that too absurd for the real world? Do you think that any government would even identify that as a fictional character? Or would they even make the connection? Would they even have the balls to? Would they just be like, oh, it's a coincidence? Like this is just some other monster.
No, I feel like that if like a real life King Kong showed up in New York today, even the people in the government would be like, wait a minute. But then that would be a little bit less of a. That would be harder.
What's the explanation? It all depends on what the explanation is. But unless Eulicles tells the government as well, they're not going to figure out that this.
The only thing that the government might think is that somehow the people who made the movie were aware that a creature like that actually existed and based a movie off of it without telling
I like
anybody.
the idea that they get interrogated.
And that would be an insane stretch, but that would be the only thing that I could imagine a government thinking,
No, but they might be too busy like fighting him off to even think of that. Or would they? They might resort to that if they're desperate, because they might get...
Yeah, maybe if you wanted to do something with that idea, you would do it like a Kong Skull Island type of thing after the action's already over, after Godzilla has left that universe. Then you have, like, at the end, the government's interrogating those guys and being like, what the fuck happened? And they'd be like, I don't know, or whatever.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
That would be the only way to use that idea if you wanted to. I don't think you need it. But if you wanted to include that as like an extra bit of like
I
detail.
feel like the question would have to be asked.
Yeah. I mean, clearly it's an unusual situation.
It is a very unusual situation. So then, what
happens?
It
is an unconventional encounter.
I think we need to put some of them in different. Like we need to put one or two of them, maybe all of them, in the midst of the attack. Pair two of them up for sure. Nakajima and Tsuburaya. Yeah, we need the old man. We need the old man and his actor. They're gonna be driving through Tokyo. Fucking Tsuburaya is gonna be pissed that like the Ghidorah suit's not working perfectly, and he's gonna be like fuming, like fucking pounding on Nakajima's head or whatever. And then Godzilla's gonna attack, and he's gonna be like, "What the fuck is this nonsense?"
Yeah, because I feel like Nakajima. This is weird because we're talking about real people and having to speculate about what their reaction would be to this insane
We're also
scenario.
exaggerating him to a potential comedic effect.
Right, and it's also a little touchy because he just died. But
yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to imagine that he might have like this weird desire to get closer to the thing and just to observe it. You know what I mean? Because of his special relationship to like character.
Do you imagine Tsuburaya wants to film it?
Whereas I feel like somebody like Tanaka is going to be watching it like from a distance, like in his office, and like having whatever thoughts about it he's having.
Yeah, I feel like Tanaka is like Shindo in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, sitting in his office watching Godzilla attack the city.
Yeah,
But I feel like unlike Shindo, we don't kill him. Maybe Godzilla just like walks by the window at one point, like barely even looks at him. Now you know what?
Yeah.
You know what would be
And
cool?
I know we have a reset button at the end of this thing, but I don't think we should kill any of them.
No, I think that's super disrespectful, given that all of them are dead now.
Time has done that already.
Yeah, so we don't need to play with that. I mean, it also would have been super fogged up had one of them still been alive and we killed that one. It's just not necessary.
It's a little different in that instance. It's kind of like a Mayor Siskel or a Mayor Ebert thing from Godzilla '98. If the person you're satirizing is still alive, it's kind of like ah, but like the fact that they're dead and have been, that's
right.
That's,
Yeah, especially since it just happened. It's not the right time to kill Haru Nakajima in a Godzilla story.
no, that's quite different. If any one of them was going to get killed in that fashion, I'd say maybe Subaraya, because you were just saying like you want to film it, and I can just imagine him getting too close and getting stepped on or something. But no,
I definitely think that Nakajima. They're sitting in the back of a car. Nakajima is his most like experienced actor. He's accompanying him to a fitting for a new model of a Ghidorah suit that may prove more effective in the filming of the rigorous and ambitious new production of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. And in the midst of this, Godzilla attacks the city. They have a camera on them because they're going to a fitting. And Nakajima's like, I want to get closer and see what's going on. Like, that looks like Godzilla. Like, this is insane. And Tsuburaya's like, yeah, let's go film it. And Nakajima's like, I don't want to do that, but if we're going to get closer, I guess. I can't stop you. So they go up on, like, top of a building and they're watching and everything. And it's exactly like the story that was told. This goes against the idea you said earlier of doing it like Kong Skull Island, where they get interrogated at the end, but I think this might be a funny reference to a real thing that happened. Although it wasn't Nakajima and Tsuburaya, it was Tsuburaya and either one of his assistant directors, or it might have been a Honda. They were in Tokyo during the filming of the original Godzilla, and they were on top of a building, like planning out one of the sequences where Godzilla was attacking. And they were just like they had a map of the city and they were drawing on it, and they were just like being very charismatic about like, oh, and then we're gonna wreck this part, and this building's gonna crumble, and this is gonna burn. And one of the security guards overheard them and had them arrested, and they were like all their shit was impounded and they were taken into custody for a while. So I feel like we should do that, where they're up there filming this like actual like tragic event. Somebody sees them and then they get arrested and find out who they are, and then that's when the questions start getting asked. Because I think that would be kind of like an awkward like situation to find Tsuburaya and Nakajima in,
Yeah. Do you think this might be too cheesy?
I don't think that's an issue at this point, as long as we're not killing anybody.
You think you give Nakajima like a Ford Brody moment? You think you give him some eye contact with Godzilla or something at some point?
I mean, if we're gonna have him get arrested, like I'm suggesting, it'll have to be either before that, or we'll have to contrive something to happen after. Do you think the military should be able to do anything to him? So here's one thing: let's presume that in order to make it a little more interesting, we don't have the military react exactly how you'd expect. Maybe not like to the extent of Shin Godzilla, where it takes forever for them to do anything, but
yeah, I'm not writing any boardroom sequences. That's.
But at least to the extent of like, they know that that's a really dumb idea, and that there should be some kind of more strategic response to this threat. Because I especially think that we should have it just like all be in the epicenter of the city and just make that the crux of the threat, because that's just the most dire consequences.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is going to be how completely useless the military would be in this instance against Godzilla. Because
well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't want just like a cliched, oh, everybody fire on him and everybody gets blown up. I don't even think they should try that. I think they should try something more inventive. Maybe they try to blow up a sub. There's one in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, again, the 90s version. There is a bit where Godzilla, like, falls in a subway. Do you remember that? Because there's, like, the whole street caves in that he's standing on.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe they do something like that on a grander scale where they, like, collapse, like, an entire, like, underground complex, like subway terminal, whatever, something big that'll, like, get him down. And then they bomb him from there. Like, they would have to do something inventive and creative like that, as opposed to just tanks, fire, helicopters, fire, like, you know, like every other movie.
Because you got to think, if the super high-tech science fiction Japanese military from the films can't do anything against Godzilla, then real-life 1964 Japan, so barely any arms to speak of, thanks to those post-war treaties and everything, they're pretty well fucked.
Yeah, they might not even get the mount a response of a much of any kind, let alone mount this crafty plot that I've put forth. But who knows? But again, we're focusing more on how these guys are reacting to and how all the creators of the original films are reacting to this situation.
Yeah.
So what's
I think
Honda?
what's I think there's some sort of military response going on, but I wouldn't want to really address it that much because I think it would take away from what the point of this one is. Which is just, and that's really interesting because, like I was saying, it's the one idea in this Godzilla Odyssey thing that's not just, hey, we should have him fight this thing, you know.
Yeah.
This
it's
and the
different.
Gabbro.
It's very unique.
This and the Gabbro one are the two ones that are the most just sort of like, that's a really neat, weird concept that you wouldn't expect, you know.
He's not really fighting anything in the next one either, is he?
The next one, hold on, I'm going back to my list.
You don't remember what the next one is? Remember, there's only 3 more after this.
I do now. I'm looking at the list. He's got things to fight. He just doesn't have things that are his size. But he has much smaller, very angry things with technology that might actually pose a threat to him to fight. So
that's true.
That's a vague hint for the people at home.
We'll get to it in a hot while. So what's Honda doing during all this? Having a mental breakdown, I already said. But where? What's he doing?
Drinking. I don't know. Did he drink?
He was not a rampant drinker, I imagine. He doesn't strike me as that sort of man. I don't know much about him personally, to be honest. I do plan on reading that book that's going to come out in October. Or November,
a situation
maybe.
like this might drive a man to doing that, no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it would be like disrespectful to have him in a bar, like having a few drinks. Like we don't need to have him like do like a Wolverine thing, like sitting there pounding back shots. Like if he's just sitting there having a nice sake, like I don't think there's anything disrespectful about that. Like I think that might actually be a good idea. Yeah.
He was good friends with Kurosawa, and I think Kurosawa used to drink. I don't.
I think we have Kurosawa like be a presence in the story, but not have a cameo. Like I think he should, like Honda should like be reading something that Kurosawa sent him, like some kind of snarky letter, and then Godzilla attacks. Like I got it. Like Kurosawa sends him some letter where he's just like, "Hey, just wanted to say, I'll probably never make a movie that makes as much money as King Kong versus Godzilla." And then he'll say something like, beware the monster you've unleashed, something snarky like that, and then he'll look up on the TV and see Godzilla attacking the city, and that's where the mental breakdown begins. Because again, he's having these thoughts of, well, what am I doing? You know, I never planned to base my career around this like sensationalist, destructive, you know, kind of.
A really interesting and weird idea. That would be like if George Lucas sent Spielberg a congratulation letter right after Jaws, and then right after reading it, Spielberg got eaten by a shark. Like that would be
right. That would be awesome. We're not holding back on the cheesy coincidences here, so I don't see why not.
Can you imagine he's not even, like in the ocean? He's just like in his office reading this letter, and a fucking shark bursts through the window.
Like in fucking My Super Ex-Girlfriend just gets thrown through the window.
Or freaking Sharknado.
So, I like this
God,
idea. I like it a lot.
I saw one of those awful sci-fi shark movies recently. It was a recent one, so it's post Sharknado, and Tara Reid happened to be in it, who's also in Sharknado. And
Does
at
she have
one
a
point,
contract with them where it's like, if you make a shark movie that's not like a realistic shark movie, I want to be in it?
well, I think it was part of like a marathon of new shark movies that they were doing to build up to the release of Sharknado 5. So her placement there was very intentional, I think. But anyway, one of the characters says to her, tells her that there's a shark. And she says, "A shark? The weatherman didn't say anything about a tornado." And then the camera zooms in on her face, and as if the director's saying, "Get it?" And I died a little inside.
That's horrible. That's not funny or clever at all. That's just a bad time for everybody.
So that was, I don't know how I got on that, but that was a surreal experience.
I hope
that I had
this issue would have been better than that.
one would certainly hope.
So yeah, Honda, I think, would then proceed to Roger Smith in the Big O style wander the streets of Tokyo while it's being destroyed with some jazzy music playing in his head, thinking about his life. And
gotta write in jazzy music.
And looking up at Godzilla destroying the city. I think all of them need to have a moment of like contact with Godzilla. And I think it needs to be a moment where they kind of have a brush with death, but they just don't die because we can't do that. And they're sort of like cosmically safe anyway. But it's more the interesting like impact it has on them that matters, you know? Like we have a moment, like I think we can do like, I don't want it to be exactly this because it would call too much back to this moment. I want to have like an Animal in Godzilla 98 moment where like the toes are like just spread apart enough where he doesn't get crushed. Like something like that with Honda would be fun. The moment we already mentioned with Tanaka in his office and Godzilla passes the window. And then I think, you know, Tsuburaya and Nakajima up on the roof filming, like that gives you an opportunity for them to, like maybe Godzilla roars right at the camera or something, like something that, some kind of, maybe we find some iconic shot in Ghidorah and we picked out that moment, like of him roaring right at the camera or something, and we recreate it in that moment. That might be fun. But I think there's a lot of really fun directions we can play with this. It's just a matter of like, we definitely would have to do more research about who these guys really were in order to come up with a real interesting and engaging and realistic narrative as to what they were doing and how they reacted to this situation. You know, we can't just spitball it like we are doing now, where, you know, Ishiro Honda is getting drunk in a bar reading snarky letters from Akira Kurosawa,
right.
Which I would very much so like to put in there, but we have to make sure that would be in his character and that would be realistic, or that's something he would do.
Because when I say our universe, it's a bit of a misrepresentation. Really, what it is a slightly fictionalized version of our universe. So really, it's not even our universe. It's just
the past as well.
It's just a universe that is incredibly close to our own. So even in that respect, you know, it's really weird. There's a lot of metaphysics going on here, more so than with a typical Godzilla Odyssey issue. Even I think. But I felt like Linda Hamilton at the end of Terminator. She's like, God, a person could go crazy thinking about this.
Oh man, there's a storm coming, Dylan. There's a fucking storm coming.
And then a small Andres comes and takes my picture without my consent, and then tries to sell it to me. But I'm like Linda Hamilton. I'm like, fuck off, kid.
Then the kindly gasoline attendant will come tell you the weather forecast. So I think really the only thing that needs to be settled then is what Eulicles is doing and all this. And maybe we should talk a little bit more about... I mean, the thing is, we focused a lot on Godzilla's internal kind of thoughts on his own struggles. This will be the one that I think distances us from him the most.
But we decided, right, that after the events of issue 5, Eulicles is going to be removed from the plot for a while and then be like on trial by the other members of the hierarchy. Is he out of that yet? Did we bring him out of that?
I think he has craftily found a way to communicate. I don't think he has any role in what maybe minutely. Maybe he does something at the 0 hour that prevents some cataclysmic thing from happening. But
because we do need him to be there for the next one, 10.
Yeah, so, but I think like maybe he's on trial, but he somehow through dimensions manages to communicate with Honda or one of them, and is like, "Hey, listen, I'm doing this. Godzilla will be out of your universe soon. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Thank you for all your creativity and inspiration. Well, it's unparalleled." Whatever.
I'll have to go back and listen to the last episode of this that we did with Andres for issue 8, because I don't remember what we had decided about that. I don't remember.
Eulicles was not in that at all because he was so busy being an idiot.
Right, but did he get out of that by the end of that story, or is he still there?
I think we'll have to. I'm telling you, I think we should have him still in that now, and he only gets out of it in the next one, and he's only sort of doing some small things from his constrained point of view because he's so powerful and is able to kind of minutely manipulate things across universes even when he's on trial.
Right, yeah. Because again, we want the focus of this particular issue to be even not so much on Godzilla, even though he's the main character of this series. It really should be, I think, about these guys and what they think of this fucking weird situation.
Yeah, totally. I think that we should definitely have like a scene like the end of the Spider-Man 90s cartoon, though, where remember where Spider-Man met Stan Lee? I feel like that's the bit where Eulicles would like send some kind of message to Honda or somebody and be like, hey, like again, this is what's going on. So I think you kind of need that to tie everything together. But yeah, I don't know. This one is one of the more interesting and unique ones, but again, it's the one that needs the most further research and development to fill out the details.
Right. It has some unique writing challenges that I don't think the other issues of Godzilla Odyssey had. The only one that I actually wrote, issue 2, the Dragon Ball Z one, that had a little bit of that sort of thing because there was a real effort to try and match the tone of the show and get that universe right. But it's even more so in this instance because we're dealing with actual people who existed, some of them until very recently. So it's a lot to consider.
Totally. But let me ask you this then. Would you still want to write it completely on your own, or?
I don't know. I mean, it's been so long since we made the decisions about who was going to write what.
Yeah.
My thought process is so far removed from where we were when we were planning this thing.
Yeah. Only because it's a lot of research. And I don't know if you want to undertake that all on your own.
Probably not, honestly, especially during the research phase,
Yeah, so I would love to help out in that regard, and I would love to write Honda drunk in a bar reading snarky letters from Akira Kurosawa. So I'm down, totally down.
Was Akira Kurosawa snarky? Is that a well-known fact?
He was pretty snarky, I imagine. He strikes me as a snarky sort of guy.
You imagine.
Not satisfied with white sorts of walls.
This is why we need more research. You imagine he was snarky.
Maybe we don't need research. Maybe our imagined, bullshit version is more valid.
there's a wonderful documentary on Netflix, or at least it was on Netflix recently, about Toshiro Mifune, and they talked a bit in that about Kurosawa, and
You would imagine so. They work together like every year.
yeah, well, there was for a long time, and then there came a period where they stopped collaborating because they just wanted to branch out, and it was weird.
They
They had
wanted
this
to
really
see other people.
they had this really successful film partnership, and then all of a sudden it was like we can't just work with each other. So they sort of stopped doing it. It was weird. But I don't remember a point in that documentary where everybody was like, Kira Kurosawa, really snarky guy, gotta say. What some real knee slappers coming out of. I tell
Snarky
you.
doesn't mean like a fucking jokester. It just means like fucking making like sarcastic cracks at other people's expense. I imagine him more just like giving like little barbs here and there, like little verbal barbs to Honda, little criticisms. Like there was that one shot in King Kong versus Godzilla where you could see the holes on Godzilla's neck. I could see Nakajima sweating in there. Probably should have covered that up, you dickhead.
Well, wasn't he reportedly kind of hard to work with? Didn't he have kind of a...
Yeah, totally. He was. That's why I'm saying I totally imagine him being snarky, at least a little bit.
He had kind of a Kubrick thing going on in that way.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's the impression I was always given. Totally.
That's not a comparison of style, just a comparison of personality.
I know what you meant. Stand by your word. Be confident.
I know you knew what I meant. I thought I needed to spell that out for the audience, before the keyboard kids come in and start saying fucking...
The keyboard kids.
They come in and doing their whole... Actually, I think Kurosawa's style is a bit more evocative of say, a Japanese Hitchcock than a Kubrick. And I don't even know if that's a good comparison. I'm just saying, you never know with these people.
The keyboard kids, as you call them.
Yeah, keyboard kids. I have a very high opinion of our audience.
Well, apparently enough so to call them keyboard kids. Well, all right then, Dylan. I think that we've outlined a pretty good general summary here. I mean,
yeah. How long have we been recording? This feels
about 42 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
is that the shortest one we've done so far?
No, most of them actually, especially the more recent ones, came out to around this length. So, I mean, what else do you wanna outline here? I mean,
it's a hard one to do because again, when it's something that we'll have to do a lot more research about. Maybe we should have done research before recording this video, honestly, but it's been so long since we've done one of these.
It's a little late now.
Exactly.
But again, this was more about spitballing about the plot than it was about the actual details as to what happened. I mean, I think we totally outlined the basic idea here of what our goal was in the issue and where this one would have stood in terms of the grander narrative.
At the very least, I think we've come up with some really good ideas about what each individual character's reaction to this situation might be, and since that's ultimately the aim of the issue, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, and also
it was very intentional. It was very intentional, the placing of this idea as number 8, because it's the last sort of...
Well, number 9.
Oh yeah, number 9, because it's the last one in the lineup that because at the end of the next one we're going to kind of start getting into what happens in the 2-part finale. So this is really the last chance to tell like a standalone story, given what we've outlined for how Godzilla Odyssey ends. And it's also you couldn't do something like this as like the first or second issue. It's too out there,
Right. It makes more sense to do at the end.
It's a weird thing to say, that anything in this series is too out there, but
yeah, just because it's a bizarre idea, and unless you do something truly interesting with it, it's also sort of pointless. Like, a bunch of people who may have created this character but can do nothing about this situation are going to react to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So unless you do the research that we didn't do, you'll it's hard to make it worthwhile. But again, I think we came up with some good directions for how you can make it worthwhile. So
I'll be really freaking interested to hear how the people listening to this podcast uh, react to that concept.
yeah, and they can tell us whether or not we're fucking idiots, or if it would be kind of cool if Tomoyuki Tanaka looked out his window and was like, you know what? I probably maybe shouldn't have made a movie about a giant monster destroying a city.
Yeah, because it's the kind of idea that I think has the potential to maybe be a little polarizing. You know what I mean?
Without question. Because it's again, it's that question of like, well, why though? But I think the why though is if we have Godzilla bouncing around universe to universe, if this doesn't happen, well, what the fuck? Like, what were we even doing in the first place?
Right. The whole purpose of Godzilla Odyssey is to tell stories that you couldn't normally tell under the Godzilla mold, to branch him out into infinite possibility. And under that purview, it kind of has to come to this at some point, doesn't it? The I mean, it's been done before, obviously. You mentioned Spider-Man, the animated series, and
You mentioned The Dark Tower.
Yeah, it happened there.
There are a bunch of examples of this.
Imagine if Bill Finger met Batman. Nah.
And Batman was like, why does it say that Bob Kane created me on there? He's like, don't worry about it.
He's like, I mean, technically the name was his, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
There's also a wonderful documentary about that on Hulu right now. Everybody, go watch Batman and Bill. Completely unrelated to what we've been talking about, but it's really good. You should go watch it.
And completely unrelated to me.
Yeah, it's also completely unrelated to him. It's about Bill Finger, the talented Bill.
Fucking prick. You're like you're a little Akira Kurosawa, aren't you? Fucking giving out verbal barbs.
And the many years it took, and all the legal battling that went into getting his fucking name on Batman v Superman finally.
A miraculous moment.
And I hate that that's the movie.
Yeah.
That finally got Bill Finger's.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's a Batman that I like the performance of, and not much else.
As if they had put Bill Finger's name on like a Dark Knight or something. There's no way it would have happened. Realistically, I would have loved it to happen in '89, but there's no way it would have, because Bob Kane was around and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the one time in his lifetime that Bill Finger actually did get credit for writing a Batman thing?
Batman 66?
Yep. It was that one episode of Batman 66 that he co-wrote with whoever the fuck he co-wrote that thing with.
I wonder how we got involved in that. I wonder if was that a coincidence, or if they were like, "Oh, you created this character. Do you want to come back?"
It's all in that documentary.
I will have to watch that then. But again, that's unrelated to this. I would love to see
totally.
I would love to see a more comprehensive. There are documentaries out there about the creation of the original Godzilla in particular that are good on the classic media. Toho Masterworks Godzilla DVDs, so you can go watch those for equivalent information on all these guys we're telling stories with. But there needs to be a more comprehensive one.
Yeah, there needs to be an actual really good documentary, that's produced like a fucking, like something like that Batman thing that I was talking about, not like a fucking, what you get on the special features menu of a Blu-ray where it's, some pictures of Godzilla and a guy explaining how they made the movie,
Right. You would also want it to be a little more like you wouldn't want Toho to produce it. You would want it to be sort of outside, No,
I would love for it to be written by David Callett.
Yeah, that would be a good writer.
Or maybe Godziszewski.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe both. Can you imagine a Callett Godziszewski collaboration?
The world would explode.
Think of the commentaries.
So look out for all those potential things and many more in the future. And Godzilla Odyssey videos, hopefully to be one of them as well. So, Dylan, I think we have certainly said our piece to the people and given them something to think about. So, think about it.
Indeed. If you haven't already, go listen to our recent commentary series that we've done. We've, of course, done the Week of Kong back in March, and then the Planet of the Apes thing more recently, Talking Apes, and then most recently our addendums to the Week of Kong, where we covered some shit that we didn't get around to the first time, and also Skull Island, which only recently came out, so obviously we couldn't comment on it before. Also, when you get done listening to that, go check out the most recent episode of DFS, where we talked about Kong projects that got scrapped over the years, because that's some fascinating stuff. And we already have plans for our next commentary project to be announced at some point in the future. So stay tuned for all of that fascinating things.
Oh my God, we're so busy. How are we? When are we ever going to stop and take a break? Never, because if we do, we'll just wither away and die. So we have to keep ourselves energized and going. Help us do that by commenting and following us on Facebook and subscribing and all that. So yeah, and motivate us to regularly bring back Godzilla Odyssey, and we will try our level best. So until we do that again, I am Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar.
And I'm Super DM64.
We have to leave them with a little tease at the very least of what's going to come next time, though.
I already did.
You don't want to give them any grander sense of where
no,
this
you'll
sit in time and space.
See. Now you've already done it.
It's the end of the plot. It's not gonna the world's not gonna blow up.
You were too specific. You're gonna figure it out. Somebody's gonna figure it out. Somebody's down in the comments right now typing, "Oh, it's friggin' X," you know.
It's the Mummy. Brendan Fraser's the Mummy.
Godzilla versus Brendan Fraser's the Mummy.
We'll see you in the next dimension.
I think that might be kind of interesting, actually. Godzilla versus the Big Sandhead or the 10 Plagues.
Yeah, that would last long.